I think what we're going to see is a continued migration from the Northeast to the South Florida for specifically the federal tax law impact.
But how long does that last? Do you think this is a long-term trend? So for the next decade, you're going to see? I
think it's a structural change unless the tax law is in place for at least a decade, basically. And you're already seeing it. Now, I don't want to give the impression that everybody in the Northeast is going to pack up and move to South Florida. We're really talking about the wealthy generally are.
What's the cutoff line? I mean, is this affecting homes over $500,000 or homes over $20 million?
Well, it's actually affecting all homes, but as you move higher in price, there's more tax associated with it, and so there's more reason to pause and reflect. There have been a lot of people that have been on the margin about this decision to make this move, and I think the impact of this law sort of makes the answer more clear.
And that's the question, because a lot of the wealthy and the big taxpayers in the Northeast are the working wealthy. They work for companies that are here. Unless you're a corporate owner or you own your own company, you can't move to Florida.
Right.
Do you think we'll sort of see a little wave of, as you mentioned, the people that were thinking about doing it and now will just do it? And once that wave is gone, things will settle back? Or do you think that, let's say we're down 10% in New York, we've got a ways to go in terms of price decreases and a continued push of people into Florida?
Oh, I think that this is going to be a multiple-year process. This is not a flicker of any kind. And I think what you have to also realize is not only is there migration, say, from the Northeast to South Florida, you're also having cross-county migration, suburbs north of New York, Westchester versus Greenwich.
But both Westchester and Greenwich have been down.
Absolutely, but sales velocity leads price direction. And so in this quarter, there was a 26% increase in Greenwich single-family sales.
At the moment, we're talking about the wealthy mobile, if you will. But the question longer term is, do you think that businesses are going to move? I mean, that's the other piece of this, which we haven't really talked about yet.
I'm not unless they're having a hard time getting talent. I think that the people that are pivoting, from a locational standpoint, can pretty much work anywhere. It's really a question of declaring their domicile in South Florida, and they have not done that in the past.
Should people invest in Florida right now? Well, I mean, if we're expecting this wave, wouldn't it be a good time to buy, whether you're buying it as an investment property or your home?
Well, you're already seeing that. You're seeing an uptick in activity across most of the more affluent towns and cities, at least on the East Coast.
What part of Florida do you think is headed for the biggest upturn? If you were to put $1 million into a property, would it be Miami? Would it be Fort Lauderdale? Would it be Delray? Would it be Palm Beach?
Well, right now we're seeing the biggest change in markets like Palm Beach, Boca Raton, and Fort Lauderdale. But it depends. Miami's a different animal, so that's a lot of the sort of multifamily new development. But for single family, for the affluent, those are the markets that are really changing now.
And then long term, therefore, on the flip side, for those in Greenwich, for those in Westchester, for those in Long Island, for those in New Jersey, is your view long term that all those prices still have a lot to drop?
I think that there's going to be continued softness for quite a while.
What's quite a while? A year, 2 years? Longer?
I think over the next 5 years or 5 to 10 years. And what we're seeing right now is buyers.
So if you're thinking about getting out, you should get out now.
Well, it depends. Each person's situation is different. It's hard to sort of.
It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, is what you're saying.
The upside is more sideways.
But the interesting question, though, becomes for certain families is, should you sell your home and rent? Right, well, and that's a different story.
Well, so we're actually seeing that. So what's happening in New York is we're seeing, especially at the higher end of the market, with the rental market at the top being so soft, you're actually seeing people camp out in the luxury rental market before they make a purchase decision. And that's been something that we've been observing over the last year.
Oh, is there any other place in the country that people aren't thinking about that you think is going to turn into the next Florida, if you will?
Really, anything that has low exposure to taxes. It's not that people make moves based on their property tax and their state and local, the loss of deductions, but it sort of tips. It's a tipping point. So any low-cost tax state is fair
And are there
game.
others? I mean, New York is being particularly hard hit, but I mean, if you go up into Massachusetts, Boston, is this a similar story in some of these other blue states?
Sort of.
So-
In other words, we're still seeing a booming condo market in Boston, luxury condo market, and whereas here that sort of time passed a couple of years ago. So every market is nuanced. The timing is different. California, the West Coast, is much more exposed to the impact of the federal tax law, but the economy continues to be, although we're seeing some easing, still seems to be sort of defying that. So it's a timing thing. It's not going to all happen at the same time.